Picture this. It's the dead of night, May 13th, 1862. The country is literally tearing itself apart in the American Civil War, and under the cover of darkness, one of the most brilliantly calculated operations is about to unfold. Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving into what has to be one of the most unbelievable, high-stakes, real-life heist stories ever recorded in American history. And we're not talking about your standard bank robbery here, no. This is a daring midnight theft of a massive military vessel, snatched right out from under the noses of heavily armed guards. It's a story that required perfect timing, absolute precision, and just incredible nerves of steel. So ask yourself, what would you actually risk for freedom? Because that right there is the absolute core of our story today. We are dropping you right into the extreme stakes of the Civil War. For the mastermind behind this heist, there was no middle ground. It was freedom or death. If this once-in-a-lifetime gamble failed, well, it meant immediate execution on the spot for every single person involved. No trial, no second chances, just a sheer drop into the ultimate consequence.
Okay, let's dive into part one, the heavily fortified harbor.
To really grasp the magnitude of this heist, you have to understand the impossible vault that needed to be cracked. Charleston Harbor. This was one of the most heavily fortified Confederate strongholds of the entire war. I mean, it wasn't just a guarded dock, it was a terrifying gauntlet. First, you've got artillery forts, these massive strongholds just waiting to blast unauthorized targets out of the water. Then you've got naval patrols actively monitoring every single inch of traffic. And as if that wasn't enough, if you somehow evaded the forts and the ships, you still had to navigate through a literal minefield of hidden underwater explosives. It was, for all intents and purposes, an impenetrable fortress.
So, what was the actual prize sitting there at the wharf? It was the CSS Planter, a massive 140-foot armed Confederate steamship. But it really wasn't just about the ship itself. It was about the hull inside. The loot included 4 heavy cannons, a staggering 200 pounds of ammunition, and, maybe most importantly, incredibly valuable military intelligence. Pulling this off wouldn't just be an escape, it would deliver a massive strategic blow to the Confederacy.
Moving on to Section 2, a once-in-a-lifetime gamble. Now, what's really interesting to look at is the contrast between the people involved. On one hand, you have the ship's 3 white Confederate officers. They make this completely reckless, arrogant decision to violate their own standing orders. They leave the vessel overnight to go attend a party on shore, leaving the enslaved crew totally unattended. On the other hand, you have Robert Smalls. Smalls was a 23-year-old enslaved wheelman, but he wasn't just steering the ship during his shifts, he was studying. He had meticulously memorized every nautical chart, every single signal code, the landmarks, the strict naval protocols of Charleston Harbor. The officers saw a night off, but Smalls? He saw the opportunity of a lifetime.
16. That's the number of fugitives that Smalls quietly gathered together in the shadows. See, he wasn't just trying to escape by himself. He convinced 6 other enslaved crewmen to join him in this insanely dangerous operation. But it didn't stop there. Before making a break for the open ocean, Smalls actually navigated the Planter to a nearby wharf where his wife, his 2 young children, and 8 other women and children were waiting in the dark. 16 souls in total, all of them betting their lives on Smalls' genius.
All right, Section 3, navigating the checkpoints. With everyone safely on board, the quiet, highly dangerous escape officially begins. So, how exactly do you slip a massive steamship through an impenetrable harbor? Well, it all comes down to flawless execution. First up, the disguise. Smalls threw on the Confederate captain's straw hat and his uniform coat. In the dark, from a distance, that silhouette is going to look completely natural. Next, he ordered the boiler stoked and confidently guided the ship straight toward the exit. But here is the absolute most anxiety-inducing part. They had to pass 5 separate Confederate checkpoints. At every single one, Smalls had to calmly reach up and pull the whistle cord to sound the exact 2 long, 1 short safety signal. Honestly, one wrong pull, or even just a nervous hesitation, and the forts would have literally blown them out of the water. Which brings us to Section 4, passing Fort Sumter. The ship is churning through the dark water, 4 checkpoints down. But as the pre-dawn mist starts to settle in, they approach the ultimate hurdle, Fort Sumter. This was a massive, heavily fortified brick citadel guarding the very mouth of the harbor. You literally could not get to the ocean without passing it. This was the point of maximum danger, and as they moved through the mist, the absolute worst-case scenario happened. Confederate guards suddenly called out from the ramparts, directly addressing the approaching ship. Now, you or I might panic, but Smalls doesn't panic. He doesn't suddenly speed up the engines. Instead, he relies on this incredibly sharp, almost cinematic detail he had observed. He simply folds his arms across his chest. That was the Confederate captain's trademark posture. Standing there in the coat and the hat, arms confidently folded, Smalls blows the correct whistle code and just keeps the ship moving. The psychology here is just astounding. Tricked into believing it was just the captain making a routine early morning run, the guards totally lowered their guard and let the ship pass.
And finally, Part 5, From Fugitive to Hero. The moment the ship clears the shadow of Fort Sumter's guns, the entire energy shifts.
Smalls throws open the throttle. He pushes the planner as fast as it can possibly go, making a triumphant dash straight for the Union blockading fleet out in the open water. But there's one final, totally heart-stopping moment, because approaching a heavily armed Union warship, the USS Onward, in a stolen Confederate vessel, yeah, that's incredibly dangerous. The Union sailors were actually preparing to open fire, but right at the last possible second, Smalls and his crew hastily hoisted a white bedsheet up the mast as a desperate flag of surrender. When the Union sailors finally boarded, Robert Smalls stepped forward and simply took off his hat. He wasn't just surrendering himself. He delivered an entire steamship, incredibly valuable heavy artillery, and top-secret signal books containing the Confederate harbor codes. I mean, he didn't just escape. He handed a monumental package of military intelligence and hardware right over to the U.S. Navy. And this brilliantly illustrates just how staggering the legacy of that single night really was. Just days after the escape, Smalls was declared a national hero and actually awarded prize money by the U.S. Congress. Later in the war, in this amazing full-circle twist of fate, he was appointed as the official captain of the very same ship he had stolen. Post-war, he returned to South Carolina and bought his former master's house. And ultimately, he went on to serve 5 terms in the United States House of Representatives. He literally went from a fugitive in the dead of night to a sitting congressman. Robert Smalls possessed this genius-level intellect, incredible bravery, and immense leadership skills, traits that were entirely suppressed by the institution of slavery, right up until he seized that one fleeting opportunity. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. If given the opportunity, how much more history could have been written by brilliant minds forced to hide in the shadows? It's a really profound thought and a powerful reminder of the hidden potential in the unsung heroes of our history. Thanks for joining me to unpack this amazing explainer and keep exploring.